Hello and welcome or welcome back to Language, Culture, and Dr. Lou. And so today I'd like to share with you an article from the Huff Post, aka the Huffington Post, right? And they changed the name in 2017, but it's the same, it's the same outlet. And so, yeah, this is all about different American sayings that don't make any sense to foreigners. And I think this is an important thing to look at because, when you are American, all of these things sound completely normal to you. And so sometimes it's kind of nice to have somebody from outside your own bubble look in and tell you what seems weird, right? Because normal, after all, is highly subjective because it's totally relative to your own experience. And anyway, so let's take a look at these. And so what the HuffPost did was they did a poll among the HuffPost Facebook users, and they asked them, uh, are there any words or phrases that Americans use that seem really odd to you that don't make any sense to you? And so this article, which came out a couple months ago in April of 2025, they compiled 50 of the most interesting answers that they got there. And so let's get to it. Now, the first two are really interesting to me because, again, most of these expressions, these are going to be idioms, things that we say, but that don't translate literally or make literal sense based on the words involved, but we've been using them since forever, so we all think they're really normal sounding. Like the first one is a woman named Anastasia Grady said when she moved here from Russia, she used to think the expression "it's a piece of cake" was extraordinarily confusing because it turns out if you're not American, you might very well have no idea what the heck that is supposed to mean, right? And we're not going to dwell too long in any one of these because I don't want the video to be, hours long. But so let's move on to number two, working the graveyard shift. To me, that's kind of funny that we have the working the graveyard shift thing because it all seems pretty normal to us. Working the graveyard shift, that would be the overnight shift and whatnot. And but somebody who doesn't know that expression, such as Josiane Roca, um, she really well. These people might really think you're talking about somebody who has a job at the cemetery, right? Graveyard shift. Anyway, and these next ones are equally as interesting. And I actually included number three in a video that I did because sometimes, well, I've heard Americans actually arguing over whether it's supposed to be I could care less or I couldn't care less. um, uh, and yeah, this person who's foreign to the US very much agrees with me. And the thing is, when you say I couldn't care less, you're you're making literal sense, but that's why I could care less, meaning the same thing, is an idiom. So it doesn't make sense to foreigners. And even again, I've heard some Americans arguing about which way would be correct or not. It turns out both are just fine here. And number four, I remember learning this when I was a little kid. I was very confused about why the heck do we use the word flammable, and the word inflammable to mean basically the same exact thing. They look like opposites, you know. And I noticed that when I was a little kid, but I just sort of accepted it as, okay, I guess that's normal, but yeah, confusing to outsiders. And so one other thing, in English, especially, well, we're talking American English here, when you pronounce the H in house and herd, but not in herbs. Explain yourselves, America. And that one I can kind of explain actually. The H's that we don't pronounce at the end, at the beginnings of words in American English usually are from romance, like herbs and herbal and hour, HOUR, and so on. Usually they came from French or another part of Romance. And so that's why we're not saying the H in most of these. It's just kind of funny because, well, in French, you never pronounce the H at the beginning of a word. So it makes a lot of sense to me. And um, yeah, in France, there's a similar thing going on, but not get into that. Let's stick to why American sayings seem odd to other people. Like that sick man, and this commenter said is it took him um sorry, it took them a very long time to make peace with this phrase. Um, and so they say referring to something great as being sick is just weird. Again, it's an idiom. They don't really make any sense. And so I would advise you, if you're an American, if you're traveling abroad, try not to use any idioms because they don't make sense if somebody is not from the same culture that you're from. And this Pop- pocketbook number 7, I love how this confused Angela Miller because how on earth is a handbag called that? It's not a book and it doesn't fit in your pocket, right? To me, I agree with that. It's pretty, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I don't get the word pocketbook. And then fanny packs. This is funny because, well, in England, well, in the UK, the word fanny, it doesn't mean your butt like we use it to mean in America. It means, well, your vagina, pretty much. And so I can imagine how this is sounding pretty hilarious and totally weird if you're not from the US and you're using it. So yeah. And plus I hate fanny packs myself. I think they're a fashion disaster. But anyway. And number 9, I agree with this one too, biweekly for saying every 2 weeks, because in Australia and the UK, they say fortnightly to mean once every 2 weeks. And because to them, biweekly would mean twice a week, just like biannually means. And I agree with that because we say biweekly and bi-monthly in the US end up meaning almost the same thing because biweekly once every 2 weeks and bi-monthly twice a month. Um, and that to me confuses me as like how the heck could those things that should mean something very different to each other end up meaning something so incredibly similar. And in number 10, this person says when I'm on a plane run by an American airline and they say the plane will take off momentarily. As a British person, that means for a brief period of time, only for a moment, which is kind of scary if we're talking about a plane only taking off for that long. But in the US, it means soon. Huh. That's interesting to me. I did not know that anybody interpreted the word momentarily different than we do, but hey, I'm learning here. And math, it's not just one calculation, so it's maths, as in mathematics. And that to me is funny because, yeah, the word mathematics is also plural in a lot of other languages, which makes it kind of funny that when we bring it to English and we shorten it, we take away that plural. And even though I know what it means, taking rain check still makes absolutely no sense to me, says this person. And yeah, I can sort of see that. if you haven't really heard the expression before, it will be extremely confusing to you. And yeah, again, to a foreigner, things we say in the US are quite odd. And so jelly is jam to us. In the UK, jelly is a wobbly dessert. So this person sounds like she's an American. Oh no, if she's saying in the US, they would say jam. Because in the US, I don't agree that jelly and jam are exactly the same thing, but they're almost the same thing. Whereas if you say jelly in the UK, they're talking about jello, aka gelatin dessert. Um, and this one in number 14 is not one that I was incredibly aware of. Hitting everything, like hit the gas or hit the light or hit the button. As an American, I never notice how we say hitting everything so often. That to me is kind of funny. And when people say, yeah, nope, I'm kind of guilty of that. A lot of times I say, yeah, no, um, which I can see well how that could be confusing to somebody else. In this one, oh, the expression shit eating grin. This American told his British wife once to get that shit eating grin off her face. She asked me why on earth she would be grinning if she had just eaten shit. And yeah, and this person said it made me question my whole life. But yeah, that is a good question. Why the heck do we have that expression? To me, it doesn't make any sense at all. Tennis shoes for anything, everything but tennis. That's funny. I don't really call them tennis shoes. To me, that's sort of kind of an old-timey way of saying it, but I just say sneakers. But yeah, I understand why you might be confused why these are not just used for tennis and restrooms. Are you really resting? I agree. That one's funny too. We're not actually resting in there. Why don't we just call it the bathroom or the toilet? Anyway, and when you say to table something, you mean to serve it. This person is talking to Americans. If we say to say table something, we mean to put it off or discussing it some later date, just to serve it. But when this person says to table something, they mean to put it on the table for discussion, aka right now. So they're talking about putting it on the agenda. This kind of means the opposite. Whereas the way we use that in the US to table something is really to delay it, to put it off. And sidewalk, it's a pavement. Huh. I guess some people would talk about it just being a pavement. Horseback riding. Where else would you sit? Because it's true, we could just say horse riding because where else the heck you're gonna sit on a horse? Anyway, and chai tea. According to Hindi language, chai means tea. So basically, you're saying tea, which is stupid. Basically, one should say milk tea with sugar instead of chai tea. That's interesting to me, although I often just say chai because to me, well, it's a very specific flavor. It's a very specific thing. I don't want to mix it up with other tea, but hey. Um, and so entree means the beginning, not the main course. And I agree with this. I teach French and uh, I have to teach entrée, meaning appetizer, right? This is the beginning. And the word entrée in French, it also means the entrance. You know, and so, yeah, to me, that's confusing how in the US we flip this around to mean the main course instead. But sometimes things get garbled when they get borrowed from one language to the next. I cannot put my finger on it. It took me a few months to know the meaning of it. Hey, that's interesting. So being greeted, "Hi, how are you?" when you enter a shop and then getting funny looks when you give a polite answer took me a while to figure out that they just mean hi. And that's true very much in the US. If somebody asks you, "Oh, hi, how's it going?" or "Hi, how you doing?" They really, really don't want a full answer on this. They're just saying hi. It's just a greeting, and nobody's looking to hear your life story, which could be a little confusing to someone. Because why did you ask me how I'm doing if you didn't want to hear how I'm doing? Anyway, chips. Oh, this is good. Chips means something very different in the UK. Um, this person is writing, they are crisps. Damn it. Chips are hot, chunky oblongs of fried or oven cooked potatoes with plenty of salt and vinegar in England. Yeah, basically in England, they use the word chips to mean basically fries, aka French fries. And so they call what the Americans call chips, they call crisps, which I think is a pretty good description in that they're extremely crispy. And this last person, number 27, is saying fall. The correct term is autumn, right? Which I think that one's a little nitpicky. We use both fall and autumn for the same thing in the US. And I actually like the word fall because the leaves all fall off the trees at that time of year. To me, it's a pretty good descriptor. But anyway, and then counterclockwise, we Brits say anti-clockwise. Sounds like a battle. That's funny. And yeah, to me, anti-clockwise sounds funny because, well, I'm so used to the American way of saying it. Fixing to. This person doesn't really put any comment as to why fixing to is odd to them. But yeah, you say, "Oh, I'm fixing to do this," or "He is fixing to do that," as in someone is intending to do something, like they're really wanting to do it, and then saying the date backwards. This too is problematic for Americans trying to learn any foreign language. Because like the whole rest of the world says the date always, always, always with the day first and then the month, and absolutely never the other way around. Whereas in the US, you say like, okay, what's New Year's Day? January 1st. We got or what is Christmas? December 25th. We're always saying the month first and then the day afterwards, which makes it really hard for Americans learning a foreign language because they pretty much do it the opposite way everywhere else in the whole wide world. And gas does not go in a car. You put petrol in a car. Well, yeah, I guess if you don't accept the abbreviation of the word gasoline for as gas, then it could be very confusing because then to you, the word gas would be something that's in the air, it's not solid, not liquid, but gas. Whereas gasoline we put in our car is very much a liquid form. So I could see that. And number 32, I don't know why Americans are making a state when Americans are making a statement, some feel the need to say period at the end of it. It sometimes makes the statement have less of an impact, where it seems to be intended to make more of one. Hmm. Yeah, that's true. I think it's highly unnecessary to say period at the end of a sentence if you want to clarify that it's a statement. Because the fact that your voice intonation went down at the end of the sentence, that already tells somebody that that's a statement. Anyway, write me. No, you're going to write to me. Hmm, that seems a little nitpicky to me, but whatever. Faucet. We call it a tap. Hmm. Yeah, some of these are just different vocabulary words, which I have no problem with Americans using slightly different vocabulary words because that's what people do all over the place. You use your own vocabulary. And oftentimes that's a large part of the difference between different language varieties. Um, and we Americans do understand the word tap as meaning, like tap water comes from the tap. Um, that makes a lot of sense to me. We could always switch over if we want. And this next one is funny because I've been annoyed by this one for years. People calling a koala bear. Because the fact is, it's not a bear. It looks kind of like a tiny little bear, but it's a marsupial. So yeah, I myself have been trying to for years to make sure I just say koala. Can I get a coffee? Can I get a milkshake, etc. When you're ordering? No, you can't go and get it. You can have it. Mm, that's interesting. And candy. We say lollies or chocolate in Australia. That's interesting. I didn't know they didn't use the word candy. See, again, I'm learning. And for me, leader of the free world applied to US presidents. What? Why? He or she is the leader of one country of the free world, right? And I agree with this. I think it's American hubris when we talk about our president as the most powerful person in the whole world, or even as the leader of the free world. That's American hubris. This is us sort of assuming we're at the very center of everything, that the whole world revolves around us. So I agree with this person. Purse is a small thing for holding money and cards. It goes into a handbag. That's interesting to me because in the US, we use purse and handbag to mean basically the same exact thing. And using turtle when you mean tortoises, then arguing that all testudines are called turtles. That's funny to me. Um, and I bet you a lot of people can't really pick out the difference. A lot of Americans can't really pick out the difference between a turtle and a tortoise. But those of us who have had some of them as pets, we can tell the difference too. And trunk, we call it the boot. And then actually this one goes right along with the last one. We don't call it the hood of a car, it's a bonnet. So in England, you've got the bonnet and the boot, as opposed to in the US, where you have the hood and the trunk. Again, just different vocabulary for the same things. Yard, when you mean garden. Someone said I had a nice yard when seeing a photo of my garden on Facebook. A yard is just dirt, bricks, concrete, or stone flags. Huh, that's interesting to me because as an American, I'm likely to call whether it's your front yard or your backyard, just call it a yard. And I don't really use the word garden unless it's literally for gardening and growing something. But anyway, that's me. Check mark. It's a tick. That's interesting. Yeah, some people just call this a tick, whereas in the US, we definitely call it a check mark. And then it's amazing for a Spaniard how you create verbs like I okayed your proposal this morning, or in on the road, she hoard a few dollars together. That's interesting to me. I kind of like that we make verbs out of a lot of things. Although please don't make somebody into a verb. Like if you're making a person into a verb, that's incredibly insulting. So please try not to do that. Bags, that means cigarettes. Mm, that's true. We use that word in a terrible, derogatory way in the US. Anyway, let's move on. I'll get that one kind of off the screen. So I always found the phrase "don't be a stranger" confusing. The first time a classmate told me that, I replied, "What do you mean? I can't help it if I'm a foreigner." Huh, that's funny. I wonder what is this person's native language, because in some languages, the word stranger and the word foreigner are one and the same. Um, so that could totally add to your confusing to your confusion there. Oh, and this one must also be from an English person. Biscuit. These are what you would call cookies. Um, so yeah, in England they call them biscuits instead of cookies, and what we Americans call biscuits, they would call scones. They're little bits of bread type deal. Well, yeah, scones more or less. So we have only got two left. Thank you for sticking with me for all 50 of them. And so pants. Oh, this one is really funny to me too. In England, when they say pants, they're talking about underpants, like underwear, not trousers. So we Americans, we need to be careful not to be using the word pants. If we go to the United Kingdom, we should use trousers or slacks or maybe even jeans if that's appropriate, but never ever pants because they're thinking underpants when you say this. So let's not. And the last of all, silverware. What the heck? When most of the time it's plastic, it's cutlery. That's funny to me. I know we call it silverware because we have old fancy sets of silver in some families, like where this is actually made out of a silver, and so you have to use silver polish and all that because it gets tarnished. Um, but we call it all silverware, even when it's often plasticware, utensils or anyway. Um, but yeah, that's pretty funny to me. So thank you so much for going through all these. And by the way, I'm going to put the link to this article itself in the description of this video if you want to go back and spend a little more time on any of these expressions. But I thought it would be useful to just see how the rest of the world looks at how Americans talk, how confused they get by how we speak, even if they are also used to speaking English, if they're not from here, use a lot of idioms that could totally confuse them. So anyway, please do give this video a thumbs up. Please drop a like on it. And if you're not subscribed to the channel yet and you would like more content about language and culture, please do subscribe. It goes very far, and yeah, it's quick and free, and so yeah, please do that. I would appreciate it very much, and plus, yeah, it would help you get some of my better content as well. And so yeah, so I'm looking forward to talking to you again tomorrow, and until then, catch you around next time. Bye bye.